We are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Life as a Chad YouTube channel. And I thank all of you for being here, wherever you may be. And of course, however you may be listening. I'm recording this a day after Thanksgiving. I hope all of you guys had a phenomenal day. Hopefully, you guys were able to spend time with family, be around people that you enjoy, the whole nine yards. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, and it definitely is a sad reality. But just know that there are plenty of people that know that, and for what it's worth, still hope and wish for connections to be made so that days like that can be spent with people that you care about. So nonetheless, hope it was a good day, mostly a positive day for you. Hopefully good food, all of that good stuff, or, you got some errands done, yada, yada, yada. But I wanted to use these days for me to really hit the pavement when it comes to pumping out some content. And I've been on a recent binge of valuetainment. Now, I do not agree with valuetainment by and large. I think that they are pretty surface level when it comes to most things, when it comes to their faith, when it comes to politique. I mean, the whole nine yards. They're pretty surface level, and it makes sense to me. I mean, Patrick, David, whatever, PBD is, a businessman. He's never going to go too far on one side. Adam, of course, is, of a certain ethnic background. And so they definitely, I'm not surprised is what I'm saying. Now, with that being said, obviously, I don't agree with most people. I mean, that's just the facts there. We all have difference of opinion, and that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. With that said, I actually think it's great that valuetainment has had certain individuals and voices on. They say that they are free speech absolutists. And I think with some of the individuals that they have had on their platform, for example, Nick Fuentes, that they have given voice to the idea of a absolutist when it comes to freedom of speech. So that is good. And, I do think that regardless, they try to bring the counterpoint of each major worldview and have them duke it out right on their platform. And it's pretty good quality content. So I saw like I said, I've been on a binge from what's going on in the Middle East. I found myself having strangely weird common ground with Anna Kasparian, and I think I'm going to do a video on that because I actually thought that she did a great job, and she is kind of getting red pilled, guys. She definitely is kind of getting red pilled, and that is good to see. But this one, for this particular video, saw two Christians. One was a former Islam member, converted to Christianity, what Muslims would call an apostate. And the other two are some of the bigger voices in the Islam community. And there's really like a ton to react to, but there was one in particular. I mean, there's so much to react. I'm an Orthodox Christian. There's the points from the Islamists who point out, and this is a common critique of Christianity, especially when it comes to Protestant Christianity, is this watered down interpretation of the Bible from a modern day lens, a modern day lens. There's actually a better word for it, an enlightenment lens. And I was first exposed to this reality when watching Jay Dyer. And this is not, this is something that if you go far enough down the rabbit hole in trying to discover truth and the root of the problem that sadly I don't think most conservatives are aware of, because most conservatives, and Christians for that matter, blame a lot of their woes on just the surface level liberalism, wokeism, yada yada yada. And the reality is that our founding fathers, and I was first exposed to this with Jay Dyer, our founding fathers have as much to do with the woes of modern day society and implementing and laying the foundation for what has become Abraham Lincoln, for example, in this liberal-minded, we will not look to books and, books that have been around for thousands and thousands of years. We will not look to that. We will not look to tradition. We will not look towards religion to come up with our moral answers. We will look towards reason and our logic as man. And of course, that's a very slippery slope, because what you end up finding is that a lot of these people who have this mindset, and in particular, it would be modern day atheists, who really are just secular, the religion that they belong to is secularism. What you find is that a lot of the things that they would call right or wrong when it comes to the moral, epistemological overview really stem from Christianity. And it's beautiful to see guys like Jay Dyer totally pin down these individuals on that fact. But nonetheless, when you go down the rabbit hole, you find that it's not as simple as it's just liberals' fault. It's modern day wokeness. It's much deeper than that. And in this clip, one of the Muslim individuals points out this fact, and there was much more in this interview that could be responded to, but I really did want to share this clip with you guys and respond to it because I thought it was pretty good. Pretty good. So let's go ahead and play this, shall we? Again, this is from Valuetainment, and let's see what this guy has to say.
Danger, but the lives of Muslims are in danger under a secular liberal hegemony. And I know that some of the viewers might not be following what I'm discussing, but look at the war on terror, or even look at me personally or Jake. But I say things that are contrary to liberalism. I critique and criticize liberal secularism. And what is liberal secularism? It's this philosophy that came out of the Enlightenment, out of the 18th and 19th century in Europe, and it was imposed on the entire globe by force through colonialism, through imperial wars. And the idea of liberal secularism is that morality should not be based on these old books like the Quran and the Bible. We have to use reason and science to maximize individual happiness, individual freedom, and equality. And this is the
a ton to unpack there. I'll finish the clip, but utilitarianism would definitely be a part of that. And it's very interesting because if you really look back and think about it, this movement was probably one of the biggest heists of all time, because what they really did was simultaneously utilized Christian belief and Christian support while ultimately still pushing their separate modern liberal utilitarian reason above all else mindset. And we see this with a lot of the founding fathers who were, on one hand, Protestant Christian, most of them, not all, but most of them, but on the other, believing in things like Freemasonry and this kind of reverence for man's reasoning, kind of in a lot of ways similar to Scientology. I mean, Scientology to me is the epitome and the natural ending point of this reverence for man's understanding and man's reasoning. So but this guy hit the nail on the head with this, and I obviously do not fucking agree with him on most things, and I think his understanding of Orthodox Christianity is massively flawed. If you guys go back and watch the entire video, if you guys want, this guy, and I've seen it in his debates against Jay Dyer, this guy seems to not understand that the way the Bible was constructed, and therefore the understanding that's attached to it, the interpretation that is attached to it, is not the same as the Quran. The Quran is a what was written now is and what will be forever. I mean, for example, whatever was written in 800, I don't know the timeline of Islam, but let's just say 200 AD. What was written in 200 AD would apply then and would equally apply in the future and henceforth. In Christianity, there has always been something known as superseding. And when interpreting the Bible, that is the scope in which it is viewed. And I remember taking it was called The Art of Interpretation in college. And it was all about how one interprets the Bible and the different books that are within the Bible. And what people don't realize is that the Bible, and what makes it such a glorious book, is it was written in many different ways using many different writing techniques, poems, stories, historical accounts. I mean, all across the board. And of course, the interpretation from how things are written differently also vary. And then you attach to it the idea of superseding. So what that means is that when there's something that is written in the Bible, both, let's say it's written in the Old Testament, when Jesus came back and fulfilled the prophetic words and accounts in the Old Testament, what he said now superseded what was said in the past. And for example, from an Orthodox Christian perspective, how we still, when we go to church, how it's the same as it would have been 800 years ago, that is us giving reverence to the tradition within the Bible. But that does not mean, and I'm giving that example because there's many things in the Old Testament, and this guy, I wasn't trying to make this video about this specifically. I really wanted to make this video about liberalism and modernity and things like that. But there are many things in the Old Testament that obviously we do not do today, but we can do it in a lessened version, symbolically, or in reverence for tradition, that does not have the same weight behind it as it would have then. Why? Because there has since been new scripture and new teachings that have come down from our God, Jesus, a part of the Godhead, that supersedes what is in the Old Testament. So whereas in the Quran, that's not the case. What was written then applies now. And so these guys will commonly say, well, if you guys don't do that, and it's a common pushback to Protestantism. If you guys don't have reverence for this now, if you guys don't apply this now, for example, being an apostate, then what's to stop there? Well, why can't we introduce LGBTQ or LGBTQ or into the church? Why can't we include transgenderism? Why can't we have women as pastors? And I totally get the point that they're trying to get to, but again, the Bible is not constructed and written in the same way that the Quran is. And so there is a much different when you read the Bible, the interpretation that is applied is much different than the interpretation and the scope and the viewpoint in which you would read the Quran. So like I said, was not trying to make this video about that, but that's a little side note that they Islam will commonly do. And this is why this guy got totally smoked against Jay Dyer, because, Jay Dyer will simply say, I don't need to respond to that. You saying that I am wrong because you're applying the way that you would interpret the Quran to me is invalid, because we don't interpret it the same. So it's just, you trying to give me pushback in that regard is invalid. It's a moot point. It doesn't even matter. So anyways, let's keep watching.
Best system of life. It's an atheistic system of life. We need to have separation of church and state, etc. This is the dominant, I don't want to say religion, but it's a dominant ideology in the world today. And it's imposed through, UN Security Council, international rights law, etc. But it's coming from a very specific philosophy that is anti-religion. It's anti-Islam. It's anti-Christianity, anti-traditional Christianity.
I would definitely agree with that. I definitely would. And I don't know if it was always, I don't know if when this worldview was initiated, the goal was to get rid of Christian traditionalism per se. Although if I had to guess, I would say it was. Nonetheless, that is what it is now. And there is a key point that I want to make when this is done. And this was probably the main point that I wanted to make regarding what this guy is saying. And it's with regards to, because a lot of conservatives will hear what this guy says and goes and will say, yeah, that's great. I totally understand. Modern liberalism is crazy. And it is, they are enemies to religious traditionalism. But why are so many Islamists liberal? Why does the modern liberal party support Islamist migrants and their immigration to the West? If they are so not in support of traditionalism and religious backing and interpretation of how people are to be governed, then why do they support Islamists migrating to the West in such vast numbers? So I will respond to that once he is done answering in this clip.
Criticize this system, and Muslims who criticize this system are put on watch lists. We're banned from traveling. Some of us are drone striked. Some of us are detained.
Drone strike.
Some of us face all kinds of canceling, deplatforming. Our livelihoods are threatened. I get death threats all the time. Almost every day I'm getting a death threat because of my opposition to.
Who got a death threat today? You, me, you.
This hegemony, liberal secularism. There is no quote unquote freedom of religion, because if you oppose this hegemony, if you oppose this system, you will be put to death. And I know you've had some very distinguished guests like
you will be put to death. You will be put to death.
Glenn Greenwald, Whitney Webb, and they talk about this system. Alex Jones, they talk about this system. They might not put it in the same exact way that I'm putting it, but it is this authoritarian, centralized, technological system. And yes, plenty of people are getting killed. What was the Iraq war about? What was the Afghanistan war about? How many?
These are the worst things
so
that men can wear.
That's pretty much the end of the clip. We will finish it here once this stupid ass ad is
killed
done.
Because of those invasions. What were those invasions justified on the basis of? It wasn't on the basis of the Bible. I wouldn't put that on Christians. I would put it on spreading freedom, spreading democracy, spreading liberal values and quote unquote women's rights. That's what millions of Muslims in the past 20 years have been killed for, slaughtered, genocided because of this ideology. So yes, Muslims are under threat. Muslims are on far more threat than, the few Christians here and there that might leave Islam to become Christian.
Go for it.
All right. So I thought that was a pretty good response. And like I said, the main thing that I wanted to respond to was the fact. So you hear what this guy says, and as a conservative or even as a Christian, you go, well, then why does the left support Islam so? Why is their support for their mass migration to the West so? And it's not a very simple answer, to tell you the truth. politics is a multi-pronged system. Okay. It's got many different players, it's got many different characters, and many different motivations. That's probably the biggest backing of all of this is the different motivations. And while you may have a worldview, a common worldview, you may have thousands of different motivations, and you do have thousands of different motivations behind that worldview. But if I were to try and simplify it, it would be this, okay? The left and the left has, I would say, just like the conservative movement, has two dominant kind of sects within the Liberal Party. You have the globalist, and within the Republican Party, the same exists. Just with the difference that within the Republican Party, you have Christian traditionalists with a more religious tilt that I don't really think exists within liberalism. You have the technocratic, modern, globalist hegemony that exists, that wants this kind of global economy, this very technologically advanced society that removes as many human beings as possible. And that, I would say, the primary motivation towards that, the ends to the means, is to provide as many resources and as much money to the few elite within that sect as possible. That's why you commonly see liberals advocating for us to use clean and imposing their will on us when it comes to being clean and having a good, solid footprint, while they are using jets and things like that, because they don't give a shit about the environment. If you believe that these fucking elites give a shit about the environment, you are a fool. A dumb fool. They are only doing that so that they can pool the resources to them as much as possible. The other sect of the modern liberal, or I guess democratic movement in America, is kind of the Bernie Sanders side of things, where it's minority-centered, victim-centered, oppressive, kind of this more Marxist, communistic tilt or bent. And they are the ones that push for migrants, Islamic migrants, to be able to come to the West, because that sector of liberalism, and I would say just in general liberalism does this, but in particular that sect, more so than the other one, wants to be seen as the savior of these victims, these minorities, the little guy. And again, I would, it's the Bernie Sanders sect, it's the Ilhan Omar, it's the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sect that wants to be seen in that light, okay? And ultimately, while that's their primary motivation, it benefits the other side, because they know this other side that I gave an example of first, the globalist, technocratic regime. It benefits them because the more migrants, they know that they will vote for the Democrat or or liberal policies, while simultaneously bringing down bringing down wages and how much citizens earn, giving cheap labor. So it simultaneously benefits them in multiple regards. And so, this is a common question that I get on my channel, you know, you look at the conflict in the Middle East and you go, this makes no sense. You know, I would think that the Democrat Party and really the liberal movement in the West would support Palestine, as we have seen throughout the years, as we have seen their support with their migration, the Islamic migration to the West. And what you realize very quickly when you spend any amount of thought on it is that it is what I said at the beginning with two sects. It's not the whole. And I would say of those two sects, the one that has the more power is the technocratic, you know, modernity, globalist regime. But they are playing the long game. And the long game, of course, is we will support Israel, knowing that in return, we will bring these Palestinians over to the West and yet again bring down wages and provide cheap labor. So it's a win all the way around. And really what this points to, because American citizens, by and large, are naive when it comes to politicians. Now they're starting to wake up, but they are naive by and large. And they think that these politicians have their goodwill, the American citizens' goodwill at heart. And that just could not be further from the truth. Okay, that is absurd. And ultimately, when you see what they do, if you were to see all of their actions in a big ass timeline, you would realize that they do what will benefit them as the elites of society with their worldview behind them. They do what is needed to survive and to maintain their power. Sometimes it's as simple as that. And so that would probably be the main point of the answer as to why you see, you know, you hear this guy who's an Islamist, he's criticizing liberalism as to why liberals seem to support Islamic migrants and then simultaneously support Israel's right to defend itself. Is the main answer is that these people will do whatever is necessary to hold on to the power that they have. And the moves that they make on the chessboard reflect so. Okay. It's not always consistent, but it's consistent in there. It's not always intellectually consistent or logically consistent, but it is consistent with regards to maintaining their power and the authority that they do have. And lastly, and we've seen this from liberal scholars, especially when it comes to the kind of communist tilt, ultimately what they want to do is to divide and conquer. And what better way to divide and conquer than to have something happen in the Middle East when you're playing both sides of the fence, where you get this side all riled up about their support and you get this side riled up for their lack of support. And it provides the chaos. It provides the lack of wages, the reduction in wages, cheap labor. It provides what is needed to divide and conquer, to increase their power. That is ultimately why you see what you see, because at the end of the day, they know that that's a real concept and they're okay doing it. They are okay dividing the American people on one given topic, knowing that they will do whatever is necessary to hold on to their power, and not just hold on to it, but to increase it. Because if citizens are fighting amongst themselves intellectually on any given current topic, it allows for the distraction needed to gain even more power. So that's pretty much it, guys. I thought that that was an interesting clip. And, you know, these kind of global politics and kind of pieces on the chessboard it's very intricate, and it can be very confusing at times. But once you realize that these people are doing, these elites, specifically on the liberal side of things, okay, and when I say liberal, I count among them Republicans, okay, because rhinos are absolutely liberal and modern and globalist in mindset as well. I'm not just talking about Democrats. When you realize that they are doing what is needed to divide and conquer and to hold on, if not increase their power, it becomes clear their actions. Because at the end of the day, that is above worldview. That is mostly what it's about, because the power and the authority are the means to the end, which is to implement their one world government without religion or anything like that, and implement a one world, one party global state. All right, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys want to check out that video, it's on Valuetainment. Hope you guys consider smashing that subscribe button. I got a new camera coming on the way. I think it's going to be a much better camera. Spent a little bit of coin on it. The channel continues to grow, and I appreciate all of your guys' patronage. It's very much appreciated. And, you know, I just hope that I give you guys good content and some food for thought, something to chew on, something to apply to your everyday life, and, you know, things like that. DBAP, don't be a pussy willow. In facts or feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. Subscribe, like, comment, share. You guys know the drill. Christ is king. Peace.